Jimmy's alive inside Silo 17, decades after its door was forced open by rebels, in a world where opening that door is supposed to mean death for everyone inside. The obvious question is how, and the more interesting one is why the show and the books don't quite agree on how much of that answer they're willing to give you. Here's the full sequence the show gives you. A resident named Ron Tucker gets sent to clean and refuses, writing lies in the dirt over the sensor lens instead of doing the job. You might wonder what specifically pushed him there, and the show doesn't spell out one clean reason. Just years of the same quiet suspicion every silo generates eventually. The same suspicion Allison and George would act on generations later in Silo 18. What matters is that one man's refusal is enough to set off a full rebellion against Silo 17's IT department, run at the time by Russell Conroy. The sheriff kills Russell in front of the vault window where his son Jimmy is hiding, on Russell's own orders never to open that door for anyone. Jimmy stays exactly where he's told. The rebels, now in control, force the actual airlock open and walk outside. The actual mechanism matters a lot here, and the clearest way to explain it is something the show already established with cleaning itself. Exposure to that air isn't instant death on contact, it's death from dose and duration building up, which is the entire reason cleaners wear suits at all. A suit doesn't neutralize the air, it just buys time. And even wearing one, every cleaner eventually dies from exposure accumulating over the minutes it takes to walk out and clean, not the second they step outside. Juliet, living longer than anyone before her, came down to reinforced tape, buying her a few extra minutes of that same slow buildup, not some special immunity. Apply that same logic to a forced open airlock, and the picture gets a lot clearer. Some outside air genuinely does drift into the structure during a riot, that's just physics, but it's mixing into 140 levels of existing breathable air connected by a single stairwell, not spreading through one open room. Diluted across that much volume, whatever reaches deep into the building is a fraction of what someone standing directly in full, undiluted air outside is actually getting. Jimmy has a second layer of protection on top of that too, since he isn't just somewhere in the silo when this happens. He's sealed inside his father's own IT vault, a space built to be independently secured on its own. Distance and dilution do most of the work keeping the rest of the structure survivable. A fortified door does the rest for him specifically. So, if the air didn't get most of them, what did? A separate disaster running alongside the same uprising. The generator room floods, and the drainage pumps stop working, and that slow structural collapse, not the toxic air, is what actually empties out the rest of the silo over months and years. That's also the answer to a question a lot of viewers probably have, whether Jimmy was really the only person left. He wasn't, not at first. A handful of others survived the initial chaos too, living off whatever supplies were left in the wreckage. Two of them, Tess and Chase, even had a child together in those ruins. Years later, during a food shortage, they tried to force their way into Jimmy's vault, the one place in the whole silo still stocked with anything worth having. Jimmy, shaped by decades of isolation and the specific trauma of watching his father murdered through a door just like this one, panicked and sealed them inside instead of letting them stay, and they suffocated once the air ran out. That's a third, much smaller way to die in the same building, and it's the reason there was nobody left at all by the time Juliet actually found him. What decades of that isolation actually did to him explains exactly why he threatens to kill Juliet the moment she gets near his door, instead of welcoming the first living person he's seen in years. He survived by talking to himself, eating whatever canned food hadn't gone bad, treating every sound in the ruins as a threat, because the last time someone got close, it ended with his father dead, and eventually with him killing the couple who tried to take his vault. Every choice he makes when Juliet finally shows up comes from that specific, narrow history. The very real fact that every single person who's ever gotten close to that door has cost him something. The books add a piece the show hasn't shown yet, and it's worth being clear up front that this comes from the novel specifically, not anything confirmed on screen. In Hugh Howey's version, Silo 17's rebellion doesn't just cause local chaos, it gets noticed by Silo 1, the hidden control silo that oversees all the others. Silo 1's actual policy isn't to punish individual rebels. It's to end the whole population the moment a silo looks unstable enough to risk the truth escaping anywhere else, since there's no reliable way to know which of 10,000 people actually heard something dangerous and which didn't. Better, from that specific point of view, to end the whole risk cleanly than to try sorting the guilty from the innocent. Silo 1 attempts exactly that with Silo 17, a remote kill signal built to do to an entire population what cleaning does to one person. Why this specific rebellion crossed whatever line separates ordinary unrest from a termination order probably comes down to what Ron Tucker actually did, not just refusing to clean, but writing a visible message and letting it broadcast to the entire cafeteria on the same screen every resident watches. A private doubt is manageable. A public one, seen by everyone at once, is exactly the moment an entire population could start doubting the same story at the same time, instead of one person quietly wondering alone, which is the specific thing this system seems built to prevent from ever taking root. Jimmy's father, running IT, gets enough advance warning that something is coming to lock his son in that vault specifically because of it, not only because a riot happened to be underway at the same time. And the kill signal itself fails, which the books tie to a woman named Anna, connected to Silo 1's own leadership. She swaps the lethal payload meant for Silo 17 with something harmless before it can be used, and she doesn't do it alone either. The books tie an entire cluster of silos that had already broken away from Silo 1's control to the actual delivery of that harmless swap, meaning the reason Silo 17 got flooded with something survivable instead of something lethal traces back to a wider rebellion already running in the background, one Silo 17 itself never knew existed and had nothing to do with. Silo 17 survived because of a fight happening entirely outside its walls, between people it never met, over a signal it never even knew was coming, not through anything its own residents actually did. Anna's own reasons for helping aren't simple loyalty to strangers in a silo she's never seen either. She's fighting for her own survival inside Silo 1's leadership, aware that the people running things intend to discard her the moment she's no longer useful, which makes sabotaging one termination order less an act of charity and more one person quietly deciding the system doesn't get to control everything, including who lives, without her having any say in it. Whether Silo 1 ever found out what she'd actually done isn't something the books resolve cleanly, which means the sabotage that kept Jimmy and a handful of others alive may have stayed exactly as quiet as it needed to be to work in the first place. Not every act of resistance against the termination order ends the same way either. That same rebel cluster went much further eventually, severing contact with Silo 1 entirely and jamming their own termination signal outright rather than relying on anyone secretly redirecting it for them. Silo 1 couldn't gas them the normal way once the signal itself was blocked, so it resorted to demolishing them physically instead. Silo 17 got to survive quietly, almost invisibly, its residents never even aware how close they'd come to the alternative. That other cluster survived loudly, and paid for it with total destruction rather than the slow, unnoticed decline Silo 17 was left to work through instead. Those two versions aren't actually in conflict with each other, and it's worth asking directly whether the show has hinted at any of this, since that's usually the next question once you know the books go further. The honest answer is not yet, not specifically for Silo 17. What the show has shown you is the broader concept behind a remote kill switch, a mechanism built into every silo designed to end a population if a rebellion goes far enough that nothing else stops it. It just hasn't confirmed that mechanism was actually used or sabotaged at Silo 17 specifically. Both versions can be true at once. A remote termination attempt that got quietly stopped, playing out alongside the local uprising and flooding Jimmy actually witnessed as a child, with the show simply choosing to show you the ground-level version first. Whether the show will ever confirm that additional layer for this particular silo is genuinely unclear, and that's worth being upfront about rather than presenting the books as settled fact for this specific adaptation. This version of the story has already changed details from the novels before, so there's no guarantee the Anna subplot survives into the show at exactly this shape or ever gets addressed for Silo 17 specifically at all. Either way, the actual answer to why the air didn't kill everyone comes down to the same basic principle in both versions. Toxic air kills whoever it actually reaches, and it reached the rebel standing at that airlock. It never reached Jimmy, sealed behind a vault door his father chose to close in time, and it never reached the handful of others who made it through the initial chaos either, right up until something far more human than poisoned air finally caught up with them instead.